Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, we will dive into how the Mountain Man method came to be. This journey started due to the need to fix a chronic 10-year bout of whiplash in my neck that kept me in constant pain. After seeing many healthcare providers, trying muscle relaxers, painkillers, and conventional physical therapy, my neck was unchanged. Over this 10-year period, I would try to resume MMA and other sports, only to trigger these major flare-ups of severe pain and stiffness that would sideline me for weeks to months at a time. If someone were even to bump into me while walking, I would get an immediate stabbing pain through my neck and down the spine. During these major flare-ups, I could barely even hold the weight of my head and would end up in bed for several hours at a time just to take the edge off the pain. I had no choice but to take multiple prolonged breaks from sports and the activities I love just to keep the pain at bay. Going through PT school seemed like a golden opportunity to fix my neck once and for all. However, it didn't pan out the way I had hoped. While in the doctoral program, I had exhausted all standard interventions, such as months of specific exercises, joint mobilizations, nerve glides, electrical stimulation, and even dry needling, but was still left in constant pain. Clinical supervisors, professors, and PTs told me nothing more could be done, and though I was about to graduate with my doctorate, I was helpless to help myself. I felt desperate to fix my neck, not only to get back to sports, but also so I could treat patients without being in severe pain all day. Curious and determined to get to the bottom of this, I continued searching for answers until I finally figured out the missing piece of the puzzle. I needed to manipulate the muscles. During my entire doctoral program, I can recall only about 1 hour of instruction on muscular manipulation, and later learned that this is the norm for most other schools. At the time, most clinicians around me frowned down upon manipulating the muscles. The general attitude was, as doctors of physical therapy, muscular manipulation was beneath us. Ironically, many of these PTs and professors were also injured, but had given up trying to find a solution. The reality of the situation was troubling and made me wonder, how can the largest organ in the body be the most neglected? The muscular system weighs more than just about all other organs combined, yet learning to manipulate it and jumpstart the healing process is not a standard practice in the field. In fact, our healthcare system has no medical specialist or doctors specifically devoted to muscles, the way a cardiologist specializes in the heart or a nephrologist specializes in treating the kidneys. I was beyond curious about the role of muscular rehab in the PT field and set out to research this topic on my own. Began to read and study every possible trigger point release method I could find, and what I discovered is while manual trigger point release showed amazing promise, it had never been developed beyond its infancy stage. One of the most helpful resources I found early on was a book called The Trigger Point Therapy Workbook by Claire and Amber Davies. It answered so many questions about what was wrong with my muscles, explained my pain referral patterns, and shed light on why this injury still plagued me 10 years later. I was determined to try trigger point release techniques on myself, as I was unaware of any highly skilled practitioners in the region, and all other interventions up to this point had failed. I looked online for a tool that would allow me to perform the techniques, and was lucky to find an instrument called the Body Back Buddy. To this day, it is the single most important tool I use at my practice, and we will be using it extensively in most upcoming self-treatment videos. I train most patients to use this with the goal of empowering them to fix their own injuries and avoid coming back to PT in the future. I experimented with some protocols in the Trigger Point Workbook, and I had modified them until I could feel my neck improving. It was not long before I could fully turn my head for the first time in years. This was an incredible feeling. Within just a couple weeks, my whiplash injury that plagued me for a decade was just about gone, and I returned to sports and treating patients pain-free. This one event turned my life and career around and was an early catalyst for the Mountain Man method. Prior to graduating, during my clinical rotations, I saw many patients similar to me, except their injuries were not only in the neck, but also the low back, hips, hands, feet, and other areas. Many of these patients had gone through multiple rounds of physical therapy and everything under the sun, just like me, but were still caught in this vicious cycle of pain management. Began implementing these simple, non-invasive trigger point release techniques on all patients who had muscle strains surrounding the areas of dysfunction. And to my surprise, patients who failed to improve with conventional interventions were experiencing major improvements, frequently within just a few minutes. Began to see that about 90+% of all patients had trigger points and experienced a dramatic reduction in symptoms and quick return to prior activities when they were treated. It blew my mind that this was not a giant part of my doctoral training and not performed by most physical therapists, even though it is a perfect complement to all other manual techniques, exercise protocols, and fully within our scope of practice. Beyond that, I was finding very little literature that focused on teaching patients how to perform self-treatment protocols, or what I now think of as building the patient's life skills. Without this resource, patients are missing out on learning a skill set necessary to prevent the gradual accumulation of injuries and shutting down of neuromuscular skeletal systems. Beyond the physical symptoms, the stress, anxiety, and loss of ability to be active leads to a decline in quality of life and enjoyment of the later decades. Over the past 6 years, I have researched and developed a system that is consistently capable of resolving injuries that doctors around me consider unfixable or a normal part of aging. After fully rehabbing my neck and returning to sports, I began using the early form of this method to quickly resolve other injuries throughout my body that every athlete must reckon with during their career. Began to see that most injuries that athletes experience that take weeks to months to resolve could frequently be addressed overnight or within a few days. When I would get injured, I was now returning to practices most often the next day with nothing more than a little soreness and the ability to go full out. Throughout the process of developing the Mountain Man method, I've honed in on a specific system that addresses all major body systems involved with about 95% of injuries I see in the outpatient setting. Unlike traditional PT, the Mountain Man method has a heavy emphasis on muscular manipulation as a primary intervention to stimulate the healing process, and also gives the patients the life skills they need to understand and treat future injuries. In addition, the method has moved away from using the hands as a primary instrument, as they quickly fatigue, can easily get injured when working on larger muscle groups, and struggle to get the deeper injuries. As a result, tools have been implemented that allow me and the patients the ability to independently get the deepest of injuries using body weight and leverage without ever breaking a sweat. Development of this system was an enormous undertaking that included years of trial and error, but the end result is a system that consistently allows me and the patients the ability to heal injuries that other practitioners have given up on. Beyond addressing pain and normal symptoms, the method goes one step further and addresses the fact that most people experience a slow but steady shutting down of the neuromuscular skeletal systems throughout their life. By not addressing large sections of muscle that no longer contract and release, people will ultimately experience secondary joint and neural dysfunction down the road. Untreated, this also causes a slow but steady loss of strength, mobility, endurance, and the ability to partake in dynamic activities, and ultimately the person becoming fragile and more prone to future injuries. Despite this unfortunate chain reaction, the Mountain Man method was designed to recognize and address this phenomenon by targeting what is rarely addressed. The results are spectacular, to the point where it usually does not matter how old the injury is. With the proper interventions, decades-old injuries frequently heal as if they never happened. In the next video, we will dive into the fundamentals of the Mountain Man method, and I will begin to show you just how simple most injuries are to fix with a combination of manual techniques and functional restoration activities. As always, if you have a friend or family member who you feel could benefit from a different perspective on restoring their quality of life, please share a link and invite them to subscribe. We are excited to move forward with this project and look forward to seeing you next time.